If you're a Roman living in 217 BC, your life expectancy has just dropped faster than a crypto scam. Why? Because there is a literal Carthaginian boogeyman loose in your backyard. Hannibal Barca has already crossed the Alps, frozen half his army to death, and then proceeded to absolutely dunk on the Romans at the Battle of the Trebia. Rome is panicked, the Senate is running around like headless chickens, and the people are demanding a hero. Enter the consuls for the new year: Gnaeus, Servilius, Geminus, and our main character for today's disaster, Gaius Flaminius. Now, Flaminius is what you might call a man of the people. He hates the Senate, he loves populist speeches, and he has an ego big enough to have its own gravitational pull. He doesn't just want to beat Hannibal, he wants to crush him, turn him into a rug, and post it on Instagram before lunch. Flaminius takes his legions north to Arretium to block Hannibal's path to Rome. He sits there, arms crossed, waiting for Hannibal to walk into a fair fight. But here's the thing about Hannibal, he doesn't do fair. While Flaminius is waiting on the main road, Hannibal decides to take a shortcut through the Arno marshes. This march is a nightmare. It's 4 days of wading through waist-deep, rotting swamp water without sleep. There is no dry land. The men have to sleep on piles of dead horses or their own packs. It is the worst camping trip in human history. The swamp is so nasty that Hannibal gets a severe eye infection. Since antibiotics are about 2,000 years away, he loses the eye. But despite looking like a pirate and smelling like a sewer, Hannibal pops out of the swamp behind Flaminius. He has completely bypassed the Roman defenses. Flaminius is furious. Hannibal is now ravaging the Italian countryside, burning farms and stealing cattle right under the consul's nose. It's a deliberate provocation. Hannibal knows Flaminius is a hothead, so he's essentially doing the "I'm not touching you" game with an entire army. And Flaminius, he is about to take the bait hard. Hannibal knows exactly what buttons to push. He isn't just marching, he is devastating the richest part of Italy. He's basically looting Flaminius's personal bank account. The Roman soldiers are watching plumes of smoke rise from their own villages, and they are looking at Flaminius like, "Bro, are you gonna do something? Or just stand there modeling your armor?" Flaminius snaps. He orders the army to pack up, but his senior officers, the buzzkills of the ancient world, try to intervene. They pull out a map. Wait for Consul Servilius? Flaminius laughs. "Sharing the glory is for people with low self-esteem. If we wait, Servilius steals half my credit. I'm going to crush one eye myself and be back in Rome in time for happy hour." He orders the march, but the universe tries to give him a hint. As soon as Flaminius hops on his horse, the horse, perhaps sensing that its rider is an idiot, rears up and throws the consul face first into the mud. Then, the standard bearer tries to pull the golden eagle standard out of the ground to begin the march. It won't budge. It's stuck. In Roman religion, this is the equivalent of a giant neon sign from Jupiter saying, "Stop, you moron." The soldiers are terrified. They start whispering about curses. "It's just mud," Flaminius screams. "Dig it out!" He forces the army to march anyway. They rush after Hannibal, abandoning proper scouting protocols because, apparently, speed is more important than knowing where the enemy is. They enter a narrow valley alongside Lake Trasimene as the sun sets. Hannibal is just ahead, or so they think. Geographically speaking, Lake Trasimene is beautiful. It's the perfect spot for a summer vacation, a little fishing, or the wholesale slaughter of 30,000 people. The road creates a natural bottleneck. On one side, you have the lake. On the other, steep hills covered in dense forest. It is a corridor that practically screams, "Do not enter." But Flaminius enters. It is the morning of June 21st. The Romans are marching out of their camp at dawn. They are tired, hungry, and probably hungover from drinking bad wine the night before. And to make matters worse, a thick, soupy fog has rolled in off the lake. This fog is Hannibal's best friend. It settles heavily on the valley floor, completely blinding the Romans. However, and this is the part that proves Hannibal is playing 4D chess while Flaminius is playing checkers, the mist does not cover the upper hills. Above the fog line, the sun is shining, and sitting in that sunshine are roughly 50,000 of Hannibal's best friends. Hannibal has arranged his army in a long line parallel to the road. His heavy African and Spanish infantry are blocked right across the road ahead, waiting to act as the anvil. His light infantry and Balearic slingers are hidden in the woods directly above the Romans. And his Numidian cavalry, they are hiding near the entrance, waiting to slam the door shut once the last Roman walks in. Flaminius, riding at the front, thinks he is chasing a fleeing enemy. He urges his men to pick up the pace, stretching the Roman line out for miles until it is a thin, disorganized noodle of humanity. The entire Roman army is now effectively inside a giant alligator's mouth, and they are tickling its tonsils. At roughly 8 a.m., the last Roman soldier shuffles into the kill zone. The trap is primed. Hannibal, watching from his VIP box seat on the hill, probably takes a deep breath, cracks his knuckles, and nods to his trumpeters. The signal is given. Suddenly, the eerie silence of the foggy morning is shattered, not by birds chirping, but by thousands of Celtic war horns, which sound less like instruments and more like a dying cow screaming through a megaphone. It's an avalanche of humanity. The Carthaginian forces charge down the slopes simultaneously along the entire line. Because the Romans are marching in a long column, every single soldier is suddenly on the front line. There is no safe rear guard. There is no center. There is just a wall of angry men screaming in Punic, Gaulish, and Spanish, sprinting downhill at full speed. For the Romans, this is a tactical nightmare scenario. They aren't in battle formation. They are in walking to work formation. Their shields are strapped to their backs. Their swords are in their scabbards. Some of them are probably still trying to put their helmets on straight. The impact is devastating. The sheer momentum of the Carthaginian charge hits the Roman flank like a freight train hitting a pile of marshmallows. The Romans are instantly shoved sideways. And remember what is on their other side? The lake. Flaminius up at the front finally realizes that the thunder he heard is actually the sound of his career ending. He tries to issue orders, but the fog is so thick that nobody can see the standards. The noise is so loud nobody can hear the bugles. It's pure, unadulterated chaos. You know a fight is intense when you ignore a literal act of God. According to the historian Livy, right in the middle of this slaughter, a massive earthquake struck the region. It was strong enough to flatten nearby cities, reroute rivers, and trigger landslides. But on the shores of Lake Trasimene, nobody noticed, not a single person. The Romans and Carthaginians were so locked in their death embrace, fueled by pure adrenaline and hatred, that the ground beneath them was doing the cha-cha and they just assumed it was the combat footing. That is a level of focus that modern students studying for finals can only dream of. For the Romans, the situation quickly transitions from desperate defense to aquatic nightmare. The Carthaginian pressure is relentless. The heavy infantry pushes from the front, the cavalry seals the rear, and the Gauls, who are having the best day of their lives, shove the Roman line backward. The Romans are forced into the lake. Now, swimming is great cardio. Swimming while wearing 40 pounds of chainmail, a helmet, and carrying a heavy wooden shield, that is not swimming. That is drowning with style. Desperate soldiers try to wade out into the deeper water to escape the swords, standing up to their necks in the lake. But the Carthaginian cavalry just rides their horses into the shallows and starts playing a twisted game of whack-a-mole with Roman heads. It is a massacre in 3 elements: on the hills, on the shore, and in the water. The cool kids club of the Roman legions is being liquidated. To give credit where it's due, Flaminius doesn't go down like a coward. He realizes he has led his men into a meat grinder, and he tries to fix it the only way a Roman knows how: by dying heroically. He rallies his personal guard and creates a small island of resistance in the Sea of Chaos. For 3 hours, the battle rages. Flaminius is actually doing a decent job of holding the line. But here's the problem. He's wearing the most expensive armor on the field. He is basically a shiny loot box walking around on 2 legs. Every Gaul on the battlefield wants his head as a souvenir. Enter Ducarius. Ducarius recognizes the consul. Why? Because a few years earlier, Flaminius had campaigned against the Gauls and treated them poorly. Ducarius turns to his buddies and yells, "Here is the man who slaughtered our legions and laid waste to our fields and our city. I will now offer this victim to the shades of our citizens." The Roman bodyguards try to stop him, but Ducarius is on a mission of vengeance. He smashes through the defense, kills the armor bearer, and drives his lance through Flaminius. The consul falls. The man of the people is dead. Ducarius tries to cut off the head to make a nice drinking cup, but the Roman bodyguards manage to cover the body in a pile of their own corpses, denying him the trophy. It's a small victory, kind of like winning a free soda after your house burns down. With Flaminius dead, the Roman army effectively rage quits. The resistance collapses. What follows isn't a battle, it's a harvest. In less than 3 hours, 15,000 Romans are killed. That's more than the seating capacity of most minor league baseball stadiums, all wiped out before lunch. But wait, there is a twist. About 6,000 Roman soldiers from the vanguard, the guys at the very front, actually managed to punch through the Carthaginian lines. They fought their way uphill, reached the high ground, and looked back. The fog finally lifted. They see the absolute devastation. Realizing they are the only survivors of the worst road trip ever, they decide to do the brave thing, run away. They retreat to a nearby Etruscan village, lock the doors, and hide under the beds. But Hannibal isn't the type to leave loose ends. He sends his cavalry commander, Hannibal, a man whose name sounds like a delicious herbal tea, but who is actually a ruthless killer, to chase them down. Hannibal surrounds the village. The Romans are starving, thirsty, and terrified. Hannibal makes them an offer. Surrender your weapons, and I promise, cross my heart, hope to die, that I will let you walk away free with just the clothes on your backs. The Romans, desperate to believe that this nightmare is over, agree. They hand over their swords. They walk out with their hands up. Hannibal arrives and essentially says, I didn't sign that contract. He claims Hannibal didn't have the authority to make deals. He separates the prisoners. The non-Romans are set free without ransom, a classic PR move to say, I'm only mad at Rome, you guys are cool. But the actual Roman citizens? Chains, slavery, or execution. Hannibal's policy is strict. 0 stars, would not recommend surrendering. While Flaminius was busy getting turned into a cautionary tale, his co-consul, Servilius, was actually trying to be a good colleague. He was miles away, but when he heard Flaminius was charging in, he sent his best troops, 4,000 elite cavalry under the command of a guy named Centenius, to sprint ahead and provide backup. It was a solid plan, except for the timing. Centenius and his horsemen arrive in Umbria just in time to miss the main battle, but perfectly in time to meet, you guessed it, Hannibal. Hannibal, who apparently doesn't need sleep, ambushes the reinforcements. It isn't even a battle, it's a mugging. Half the Roman cavalry is killed instantly, the other half surrenders. Just like that, Rome loses its only mobile response force. It's the military equivalent of losing your wallet and then dropping your phone in the toilet while trying to find it. So, let's recap the scorecard for the week. 1 consul dead, 1 entire army deleted, 15,000 dead, thousands captured, the backup cavalry destroyed, and Hannibal is loose in Italy with 0 supervision. The news hits the city of Rome like a physical blow. Usually, when Rome loses, the Senate tries to spin it. Oh, we didn't lose, we just advanced in the wrong direction. But this catastrophe is too big to hide. Survivors are trickling back, telling stories of water turned red with blood and a monster with one eye who commands the fog. The crowds gather in the forum. They are screaming for information. The Senate meets from sunrise to sunset, trying to figure out how to tell the populace that their security clearance has been revoked. Finally, the praetor Marcus Pomponius steps out to address the terrifying mob. He doesn't give a long speech. He doesn't offer hope. He says one sentence that freezes the blood of every Roman citizen. We have been defeated in a great battle. When Praetor Pomponius dropped the "we lost" bomb, Rome didn't just panic, it had a complete nervous breakdown. For days, the city gates were crowded with women waiting for news of their husbands and sons. But the only people who arrived were dusty, wounded stragglers who confirmed that, yes, Flaminius was dead, the army was fish food, and Hannibal was basically the Grim Reaper. The fear was so palpable that the Senate ordered the bridges over the Tiber River to be destroyed. They fully expected Hannibal to knock on the front door within days. They were barricading themselves in, like survivors in a zombie movie. In times of absolute crisis, Rome had a special break glass in case of emergency clause in their constitution, the dictatorship. Usually, a consul appoints a dictator to take absolute power for 6 months. But with one consul dead and the other stranded in the north, the people had to do something unconstitutional. They elected a dictator directly. They chose Quintus, Fabius, Maximus. Fabius was the polar opposite of Flaminius. Flaminius was fire, Fabius was water. Flaminius was a YOLO kind of guy. Fabius was the guy who reads the terms and conditions before clicking accept. He was a stiff, traditional conservative who believed Rome lost because they neglected the gods, not just because they were bad at fighting. His first act? Not raising an army, but holding a massive religious festival. He made the entire city promise to throw a giant party for the gods if Rome survived the next 5 years. The people wanted revenge. They wanted blood. Fabius gave them a prayer circle and a lecture on patience. Rome had just hired the most boring man in Italy to save them from the most exciting general in history. And strangely enough, it was exactly what they needed. So, Did Hannibal march on Rome and burn it to the ground? No. In a move that historians still argue about over too many glasses of wine, Hannibal decided his army was too tired, too sick, and too poorly equipped for a siege. He turned east to the Adriatic coast to let his men rest, drink wine, and heal their scurvy. He let Rome live. But the Battle of Lake Trasimene left a scar that never healed. It changed the Roman psyche forever. Before this, Romans thought war was just a contest of bravery. Whoever screams loudest and pushes hardest wins. Flaminius was the embodiment of that arrogance. He treated war like a bar fight. Trasimene taught Rome that war isn't a bar fight, it's chess. And they were playing against a grandmaster while holding a checkers piece. Because of this disaster, Rome accepted the unsexy, boring genius of the Fabian strategy. They learned to avoid battle, to scorch the earth, and to win by simply not losing. Flaminius had to die so that Rome could learn how to survive. To this day, the geography remembers the horror. There is a small stream near the battlefield that runs into the lake. The locals call it Sanguinetto, the river of blood. Legend says it ran red for 3 days. In the end, Gaius Flaminius wanted to be legendary, and strictly speaking, he succeeded. He is forever remembered as the man who walked into the most perfect trap in military history, proving once and for all that in the game of war, if you don't know where the enemy is, look behind you.